What if I told you that every single time you make a decision, your mind is actually navigating a hidden geometric landscape? Seriously. That your thoughts aren't just, random electrical firings, but that they have a real, underlying, stable structure to them. I know it sounds like something out of science fiction, but it's a real theory that's totally changing how we understand the mind. So let's dive in.
So let's just pause on that for a second. Is there a hidden geometry to your thoughts? When you're weighing a choice, big or small, does it really feel like a simple list of pros and cons? Or does it feel like something deeper, something more complex, and maybe even a little bit weird is going on inside your head?
You see, for the longest time, we've tried to fit decision-making into this neat little classical box. It's either A or B, simple, logical, rational, like a computer. But we all know deep down that's not how it works, right? The human reality is messy. Our choices are totally shaped by context. They're clouded by uncertainty, and they're all about probabilities that almost never follow that simple, clean logic.
So how in the world do we even begin to model this beautiful mess? Well, it turns out we need a completely new lens, and that's where this revolutionary theory comes in. It actually borrows its whole framework from the strange and wonderful world of quantum physics to help us finally make sense of the mind.
This field is called quantum cognition. Now let's be super clear about something. This is not saying our brains are literally quantum computers. That's a whole other thing. Instead, what it does is it borrows the mathematical tools of quantum theory to create these incredibly powerful models of how our minds work, especially when we're dealing with all that uncertainty and context that makes us, beautifully and sometimes frustratingly human. All right, so within this huge field, we're going to zoom in on one specific, really powerful concept. It gets right to the heart of how we structure our decisions. You can think of it like a fundamental building block of our thought process, a kind of hidden mental scaffold.
And it's called the quantum cognitive triad. At its heart, the idea is pretty simple. Our minds seem to create a stable yet flexible structure by grouping the key contexts of any decision into sets of three. It's like this foundational pattern that our brain uses to bring a little bit of order to the absolute chaos of our subjective experience.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds incredibly abstract. How can we possibly visualize it? Well, this is where the model gets truly elegant. It actually gives us a way to map our internal, subjective world onto a real geometric shape. So how do we build this map of our own thoughts? It's basically a three-step process. First, you identify the key factors, the contexts that are influencing your choice. Second, and this is the quantum part, you represent each of those contexts not as a simple on or off switch, but as a qubit. It's a quantum state that can be a mix of possibilities all at once. The best analogy is a dimmer switch instead of a regular light switch. It can be fully on, fully off, or anywhere in between. And finally, you take these rich, multifaceted states and you map them as specific points on a sphere, which scientists call the Bloch sphere. And here is the really cool part. The placement of these points on the sphere isn't random at all. A context's location is a direct representation of how important it is to you. So let's say you're deciding on a job offer. The point for salary might be right up at the north pole of the sphere because it's super important to you, but commute time might be somewhere down closer to the equator. This sphere literally becomes a geometric map of your personal, subjective world.
Okay, I get it. Points on a sphere can still feel a little weird and abstract, but there is a fantastic analogy that just makes this entire concept click into place, transforming it from abstract math into something we can all intuitively get. And here it is. The core idea is that the quantum cognitive triad can be thought of, get this, like a triangular prism of thought. It's such a simple, elegant image, but it perfectly captures the stable yet really dynamic nature of our minds at work. Let me show you exactly what I mean.
So here's how this awesome analogy breaks down. You know the prism's solid, stable shape? Well, that's the underlying cognitive structure that brings order to your thoughts. The three distinct faces of the prism? Those represent the three key contexts your mind is juggling for any one decision. And now for the most interesting part, the angle from which you're viewing the prism. As your perspective shifts, what you see changes, right? That represents how a tiny change in your focus can lead to completely different and sometimes really surprising choices. This is a fascinating model, for sure. But you might be asking, okay, so what? Why does this actually matter? What does it give us beyond a really clever theory? Well, this is where we see its real power in helping us understand ourselves. So what's the real-world impact? For starters, this model helps explain some of the most puzzling quirks of the human mind, like something called the disjunction effect.
That's this weird phenomenon where people are actually less likely to make a decision when they have more information, even if that information is helpful. The prism model shows us how our perspective just gets clouded. And maybe most importantly, it gives scientists a powerful tool to quantify something that has always seemed impossible to measure: our own personal subjective sense of meaning.
So, all of this leaves us with a truly profound question. If our very thoughts have this hidden geometric structure, what other invisible frameworks might be out there, shaping not just our decisions, but our entire perception of reality itself? Now that is something to think about.